Welcome back to another FPL video and podcast. This will be the transfer tips for Game Week 8. We are in the middle of an international break now once again, but I'll be discussing 11 players to buy, hold, sell and skip. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. There will likely be an updated version of the transfer tips next week, and the same goes for the best wildcard team and team selection. So keep your eyes peeled by smashing the like button of this video, getting it to 300 likes, and to keep on pushing towards 35 subscribers and beyond. Check all the other links in the description below for my Patreon, the Championships Discord server, FPL League Draft Hound, as well as Spotify. Without further ado, let's jump straight into it. The first purchase I'm going to recommend this week is Delap, who's a 5.6 million forward with great upcoming fixtures, and his ownership is so low at 4.5%. That was his fourth goal of the season against West Ham back in Game Week 7. 5 big chances is very decent for a budget forward, and he's got 31 FPL points for the campaign up until now. The other underlying stats aren't particularly great. 11 shots overall, 7 on target, an XG figure of 1.13, so you could argue there's a massive overperformance, but 5 key passes and 5 big chances are the standout stats for Delap, and I think he's the best Ipswich Town asset by far, although the likes of Davis and Greaves are good alternatives in other positions. But in terms of the attackers, you definitely don't want to go for anybody else in that Ipswich attack apart from Delap, who's leading the front line. Another asset from a newly promoted club is James Justin, and I think he's worth buying with Leicester City's upcoming fixtures. Now, I have changed Nottingham Forest to grey on the fixture difficulty rating because they've been very impressive so far this season, especially from a defensive perspective, but of course, in the FPL website, it is marked as green on the fixture difficulty rating. But Justin costs 4.5 million, his ownership is only 2%, he scored a brace against Arsenal back in Game Week 6 and got an assist in Game Week 7 with Leicester City keeping a clean sheet against Bournemouth in a 1-0 victory. 5 shots inside the box is very impressive from James Justin, who has 29 FPL points so far. The other underlying stats aren't great. 6 shots overall, 2 on target, 1 big chance created, 2 key passes, but no big chances whatsoever, and the XG is 0.31. But James Justin was a very good FPL asset several years ago before that very unfortunate injury which kept him out in the long term. But if you are looking for a Leicester City defender, James Justin is my preference, although you have some alternative picks who are even cheaper like a Collie and Wout Fass. But if you had the funds, I think James Justin is a very good asset for the next 5 to 10 game weeks. Brennan Johnson is in a great vein of form at the moment, scoring in 6 consecutive games, helping Spurs win 5 of those across all competitions. But back in Game Week 7 against Brighton, they were 2-0 up at half-time and somehow fumbled the lead, with Brighton making a great comeback in the second half, but Spurs really let it slip. Now with Brennan Johnson, he's a 6.5 million midfielder, which makes him very affordable in most cases. His ownership is also 4.5%, so all the buys I'm recommending have very low ownership and great upcoming fixtures until Spurs play Man City in Game Week 12. That's 3 goals and 2 assists for Brennan Johnson so far this season in the Premier League, and 21 shots inside the box is probably the best stat I've read out for any player considering the price point and also the upcoming fixtures. He's only 6.5 million and he's producing this level performance and great underlying numbers, so I think Brennan Johnson is a buy. But you have alternatives in that Spurs midfield like James Maddison, who would be second in my list, and then Kulusevski in third. My favourite Spurs attacker in the long term would be Solanke, who's currently in my setup, but Brennan Johnson is the most in form at the moment. Now, you might argue he is approaching the end of that run, so that would be the concern with buying him now, but I think he could still return a few contributions, whether it's a goal or an assist, over the next 4 game weeks, while Spurs have a great fixture run, facing the likes of West Ham and Ipswich at home. Aston Villa at home isn't the easiest, but there could be chances for the attackers, and Crystal Palace away is a very promising fixture based on how they're performing so far this season. So for me, Brennan Johnson is a buy. I'm slightly conflicted about Luis Diaz, who had a great start to the season with 54 FPL points, but a lot of people bought him in back in Game Week 6 when he was the highest scoring midfielder in FPL, but he has been overtaken by many midfielders up until now, with a blank in Game Week 6 and then being benched against Crystal Palace in the early kickoff of the previous game week. His ownership is still very high at 35% and his price tag is 8.1 million, but we could see that fall very soon, and for those that had him from the beginning, you are going to lose a bit of selling value as well, so just bear that in mind. He's got 5 goals and 1 assist so far this season with 7 big chances, 10 key passes, also 15 shots overall and 2 big chance created. But I think Diaz is probably a hold for Game Week 8 against Chelsea, but ultimately you would be looking to sell him in the near future, and it's a matter of timing. So this is kind of a 1 game week sort of category for Luis Diaz, because I think those that sell him in Game Week 8 might end up regretting it If you don't have Mbumo though, I wouldn't hesitate whatsoever. I think Diaz to Mbumo is an upgrade based on fixtures, form, and also how nailed on they are in their specific clubs. Diaz will be playing for Colombia in the international break for those World Cup qualifiers, so there is a chance he comes back late for that Game Week 8 fixture against Chelsea, and he could be benched once again. Gakpo is always going to pose a threat to his minutes across the Champions League and Premier League, so I'd be slightly concerned with Diaz in the long term, and I would be looking to sell him very soon, but I think he'll start against Chelsea as things stand, and he can produce a good return against the Blues. Mazraoui was subbed off at half-time in Man United's 0-0 draw against Aston Villa, and Ten Hag didn't really give much away in his press conference afterwards. He said, "We had to take them off," referring to Maguire and Mazraoui, at half-time. "Tomorrow we have to see what the diagnosis is." And he also added, "We have to assess this. I can't tell you now what the issue is. I know what the issue is, but I cannot say now how good or bad it is. We have to see and assess this tomorrow on Monday, and then we'll bring you news." So, as you can see, we're not going to get too much in terms of the injury front, and on FPL it is reported he's got a knock, and he has withdrawn from the Moroccan squad for the 2 games they had scheduled over the next week or so. I think Mazraoui will be fit and available for Game Week 8, and if that's the case, he's definitely worth holding on to. He's one of my favourite 4.6 million defenders and under, and with United's upcoming fixture swing and also their defensive stats, I think it's worth keeping Mazraoui. Now, I say defensive stats, the expected goals conceded isn't great, but they've actually got several clean sheets so far this season, and Mazraoui was a bit unfortunate not to be part of that 0-0 draw and get the clean sheet points as well, but he's got 2 bonus points for the season, 1 assist, and 26 FPL points. He's my favourite United defender at the moment, but there are some concerns when Luke Shaw comes back. How will that impact Mazraoui? Will he drop to the bench, or will Luke Shaw stay there and have to fight for a spot? And maybe Dalot on the other side, will he be the one dropping out? It's a bit uncertain, but I think Mazraoui, if he can stay fit and nailed on in that team, he's got bonus points potential, a few assists here and there, and I could see United keeping plenty of clean sheets, whether Ten Hag stays at the club or not. This is certainly a very interesting one because you've got so many budget forwards who are performing right now, like Raul Jimenez. You've got Danny Welbeck, who's been very consistent so far this season. Chris Wood is only a little bit more expensive than Jamie Vardy. Dominic Calvert-Lewin, although he's been very poor himself, I wouldn't recommend that sort of switch either way. But Jamie Vardy, the biggest problem with him is the underlying numbers. They are terrible, to say the least. He has 2 goals so far this season, but only 5 shots, which is very concerning. But I would keep him against Southampton away. If he doesn't return there is a good opportunity to sell him in Game Week 9 to a better performing forward who's got the underlying stats and sustainable numbers to really push on and be consistent in Fantasy Premier League. But Vardy has 24 FPL points and an ownership figure of 11.7%. I still think he's a decent option in the long term, but he will be frustrating, and until he can improve upon those numbers, I don't think Vardy's going to get many FPL returns. That's 4 big chances, which is a decent stat. The rest, though, are really grim reading. It makes for grim reading anyway. The XG figure, 1.78, only 3 key passes and 3 shots on target. You need to have much more from that in terms of Jamie Vardy, who is clinical, but he's not getting the volume of shots necessary to get consistent returns. So I think Jamie Vardy is a hold for Game Week 8, and if he blanks against the Saints, I will look to sell him in Game Week 9. Several FPL managers who wildcarded in Game Week 6 would have bought Semenyo. He has been fairly underwhelming, only the 1 goal against Southampton and Leicester. You would have expected a little bit more than that. His price is 5.6 million and his ownership is just over 10%. He's got 3 goals and 1 assist this season, which is very impressive, and 31 shots is incredible for a budget midfielder, but a lot of these shots are being blocked, and that's 31 FPL points as well. The next 3 fixtures are terrible, facing Arsenal, Aston Villa, and Man City. I think the best of those would be Brentford away in Game Week 11. Aston Villa away might not be the worst for the attackers like Semenyo, who will get chances in that game, but I don't see many returns over the next couple of weeks. And there are some cases where you could bench Semenyo and start your third forward instead every single week and your other midfielders, and that's something I might do in my own team selection. But if you're in a position of strength and you can sell Semenyo, or you need that player to really fill in the midfield, then you could sell Semenyo to a McNeil, who I recommended last week in the transfer tips too. But Semenyo is still a good option in the long term. Once Bournemouth's fixtures turn for the better in Game Week 11, he's definitely back on radar. But for those that need a forward or midfielder to start week in, week out, I'd look to sell Semenyo for the next 3 game weeks. But it has to be said, his statistics all round are very impressive. The XG is 2.08, the expected assist 1.48, 3 big chances, 2 big chance created, and 7 key passes. The shot volume is incredible, although you would maybe hope for more shots on target with just the 7, but 19 shots inside the box is a great stat. I think Semenyo is definitely worth maybe holding in certain cases, but if you need this player to start week in, week out, I will look to sell him for the next 3 game weeks. Alisson sustained an injury in that 1-0 victory over Crystal Palace on the Saturday, and it looks like he's going to miss game week 8. There is a chance he's available for game week 9 or 10, but we don't know the full extent of the hamstring injury yet. His price is 5.5 million. The ownership is still very low at 8.9%, with 4 clean sheets, the most of any goalkeeper so far this season, and only Onana is really keeping pace with him in terms of FPL points, 15 saves, and the expected goals considered figure for Liverpool whilst Alisson is on the pitch is 3.7. That is incredible, and whilst Liverpool will probably concede more goals when the fixtures get tougher in game week 8, I still think they've got the best defence in the Premier League up until now. Now that could change in a couple of months with the likes of City and Arsenal also having great defences, but I think Liverpool could end up being in the top 2 defences for the entire league over the course of the season, and that is very impressive, of course, and that's why Alisson is definitely worth considering in FPL when he is fit. But in his absence, it will be Kelleher at 4.4 million filling in, and the only reason he didn't against Crystal Palace is because he was ill, so there was a debut for the third choice goalkeeper. But I'm not too keen on a short-term punt on Kelleher. If you've got a lot of free transfers or you don't know what to do, then you could make a move between the sticks. But with Alisson in particular, I'd look to sell him to a David Raya, or perhaps go even cheaper with the likes of Onana, Sanchez and Sales. Another injury doubt is Ezri Konsa, who has withdrawn from the England squad, and Unai Emery said he doesn't know if it's going to be a big or small injury. But I'd look to sell Konsa regardless, because Aston Villa's fixtures are turning for the worst, and I only see 1 clean sheet from the next 4 game weeks. But it is worth mentioning that sometimes Aston Villa switch on defensively against the bigger sides. They kept the clean sheet against Man United in game week 7 and also against Bayern Munich just several days ago, and then against the weaker teams, so to speak, or maybe the teams they're favoured to win against, like Ipswich Town, they concede multiple goals in the process. But over the course of the season, I don't think Konsa and Aston Villa will get many clean sheets, and the attacking returns will be minimal for all of the Aston Villa defenders, bar Luca Dean. So I would look to sell Ezri Konsa, even if he is fit, against Fulham away. But you could make a case for keeping him for 2 more weeks if he is available, and then sell him in game week 10 when they face Tottenham away, and they've got Liverpool away back-to-back. But his price is 4.5 million, his ownership is 13.4%. He scored once already this season in that 3-1 victory against Wolves several weeks ago, but no clean sheets for Ezri Konsa whilst he's on the pitch. A bit unfortunate, of course, with the early substitution and 17 FPL points. I look to sell Konsa. Personally, if you disagree, let me know down in the comment section below. But as I mentioned earlier, if he is available, you could perhaps keep him for 2 more weeks, but ultimately, he is going to be a sell in the long term. Mateo Kovacic has enjoyed his best start to a Premier League season in his career with 3 goals and 1 assist, but only 3 shots on target, and that's kind of one of the big warning signs about him being a trap in FPL from my perspective. He's a quality player, especially on the ball, but he's never been known for his goal-scoring prowess or even the creativity and the assist per se. I think he's got a different type of creativity, finding players in different areas, but not in terms of creating goal-scoring chances. That's 36 FPL points with great upcoming fixtures for Man City, but I think Kovacic wastes a potential 3rd Man City slot that you want to spend on the likes of Rico Lewis, Phil Foden, Kevin De Bruyne when he's fit, and of course, Erling Haaland. You've also got other options like Akanji and Gvardiol in the defensive line. So I would skip Kovacic completely. His price is 5.5 million. He's had a great start to this season, but you look at these numbers, 0 big chances, 0 big chance created, 8 key passes is decent to be fair, but only 3 shots on target and 3 of them inside the box. The XG is not even 1, it's 0.66, and the expected assist is 0.68. I think he's massively overperforming. There's an element of luck maybe, some of the goals he scored against Fulham, but look, he's a good player. He might get a few more attacking contributions from now until the end of the season, but I think there are many better options in that Man City midfield, which includes players such as Savio, Doku, Bernardo Silva, and of course those that I mentioned earlier in Kevin De Bruyne and Foden. The 11th and final player covered today is Mikel Antonio, who for me is a skip. He produced 18 points in Game Week 7 in that 4-1 victory over Ipswich Town. He got 1 goal and a hat-trick of FPL assists, but none of them actually counted as an official assist according to Opta, so that's definitely worth highlighting. He's got 1 goal and 4 FPL assists for the season now. The XGI is 1.84, which isn't too bad for a 5.4 million forward. He's another one to add to the list of so many budget forwards in the game like Delap and all the other ones I mentioned earlier in this podcast. 30 FPL points is nothing to be scoffed at. I think Antonio can offer value in certain games like Ipswich Town at home, but I look at the upcoming fixtures and I don't see Antonio getting many FPL returns. And for me, the best West Ham attacker by far is Jared Bowen, but he is also 2 million more expensive than Antonio. So I understand why some of you might want to go in this direction instead. When you've got the likes of Delap with better fixtures and also better underlying numbers generally speaking, you've also got Jamie Vardy, Welbeck, Chris Wood, Raul Jimenez. I think all of these options are better than Antonio, but to be fair, his stats are actually pretty good for the most part. 4 big chances, 3 big chance created, 3 key passes, 11 shots inside the box. The XG is 1.59, which isn't particularly great, but overall, you could see him getting a few more goals and assists throughout the next couple of weeks potentially, but I don't think it's worth investing in Antonio. And if you are going for a West Ham asset, I would even go for Kudus instead, but Bowen is by far the best option from the Hammers. That wraps up the Transfer Tips podcast for Game Week 8. There is going to be an updated version next week, and the same goes for the best wildcard team and team selection, so keep your eyes peeled on this channel. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a single upload, and you can do that by smashing the like button and subscribing for new. Our aim is to get this to 300 likes and to keep on pushing towards 35 subscribers and beyond. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and check all the other links in the description below for my Patreon and the championships, the Discord server, FPL League, Draft Hound, as well as Spotify. Leave a 5-star review on my podcast. It goes a long way to support my channel. I wish you all the best of luck for Game Week 8 and the rest of the season, and I'll see you next time.